So we're very excited to formally now launch ARC Northwest Coast Phase 2. But we'd just like to give additional context behind it from the very top. And we're delighted to welcome the Head of Research and Capacity and Growth in Science, Research and Evidence Directorate at the Department of Health and Social Care. Welcome, Alice Mortlock.
Good morning. So, gosh, that's an old picture. So, actually, I'm Deputy Director of Research Commissioning at DHSC, and that's very old, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, so I look quite a bit younger. So, I'm the mysterious person in the Department of Health and Social Care that's responsible for commissioning NIHR infrastructure and the NIHR programmes. So what that means is I'm the senior responsible officer who has to go to government, go to Treasury, defend the investment, defend our ask for all the money, and then ensure that the NIHR commission the research that the Treasury, ministers, government want. So it's actually a real privilege to be invited here today. I don't often get the chance to come to events like this. And actually, this is my first ARC Fest, so I'm quite excited to be here. And it's lovely to meet everyone. I did have a few slides, actually, but unfortunately, government computers, the security is so tight, I can't actually get onto the Wi-Fi to transfer them. So you'll just have to bear with me while I walk through them. What I wanted to highlight was that NIHR's mission is to improve the health and wealth of the nation through research. Now, you all know that, but what you might not have clocked is that this government talks about health and wealth with equal importance. So our ministers in DHSC view wealth as underpinning health because we need that growth to catalyse the service transformation that we're all talking about. So I was delighted to see so much emphasis on those relationships with industry, those collaborations within this commission, and thank you to Mark for highlighting that. And what I want to say to you is it's so important that we focus on that as we move through our next phase within the NIHR infrastructure. And Mark also highlighted that within the NIHR framework, we talk about what we do in the context of 4 I's. So that's impact, inclusion, innovation, and investment. And of course, as Mark highlighted, you've already got a lot of innovation and investment embedded within this commission, which is fantastic to see. What I want to say is around impact. So my job is to persuade ministers and Treasury to invest in NIHR infrastructure. And I need your help to do that. I need you to shout about what you do. So whenever you talk about your research, that might be on the news, in the newspaper, publications, whatever it is, please do reference the fact that you're NIHR funded, because that's really important evidence for us. And my goodness me, the NIHR infrastructure really delivers fantastic research. There are so many wonderful examples of things that make a fantastic difference to patients' lives. So please do keep shouting about it. And, you know, I think for the ARCs in particular, that's really important because your job is to catalyse and translate that research into policy and practice. And I know you're going to be talking a little bit about some of the knowledge mobilisation work you're doing later on. But, you know, I think the ARCs have got such an important contribution to play in this space. So please have a focus on that. I was also really pleased to hear Mark and Ben talk so much about inclusion because this is a really important point for us. And actually, I come from Portsmouth, which is another deprived coastal town, very similar to Blackpool. In fact, I think we're going head-to-head in the City of Culture bids later on this year. Or maybe I've got that wrong. But, you know, there's a lot of similarities between where I live and Blackpool. So, you know, I'm very familiar with some of the challenges you're just describing. But what I want to say is the slide I've got in front of me is from Whitty's data. And what it does is it flags the fact that if you live in a deprived community, you spend over 26 years in poor health compared to people who live in an affluent area who spend maybe only 15 or so years in poor health. And we really haven't shifted the dial on that. And that's just not good enough. So what we need to do is we need to improve the number of years that people spend in good health. If we can shift that even slightly, then the impact on those people's lives is really significant. But importantly, it's also impactful in terms of being able to offer everybody a better service through our health services and all of our local services, etc. So it's a win-win for everybody. And again, I think that's the really unique space that the ARCs play in terms of our infrastructure offer. You really do operate in that space and can make a difference. So I'm really excited to see what this ARC can do in terms of tackling those health inequalities. And of course, health inequalities affect men and women, but this month we've had the launch of the Women's Health Strategy in government, and it is a refreshed strategy, but I was delighted to see that you've got a women's health theme here, so please do have a look at that strategy, and you'll see that research is really embedded across the plan, and we have a lot of ambitions for what we can do in this space. And of course, the NIHR has a rich portfolio in terms of women's health and the impact that we've delivered so far. But of course, we need to do more. We need to do more for men and women. And of course, there is a men's health strategy too. The other thing I just want to flag is we are nearly a year into delivering the 10-year plan, which again, Mark and Ben have already referenced. And I know that the 3 shifts are embedded throughout this commission, and I've seen that. And of course, that's flagged this morning across those themes. But what I want to talk about is the shift to neighbourhood health, so the shift to community settings, because again, for me, this is where the ARCs can make a really significant difference. We have a wealth of NIHR infrastructure, and for us, it's really important that that infrastructure collaborates. And again, Mark made that point this morning. But when we think about neighbourhood health, it's really a Venn diagram. You have the NHS services that operate both within secondary care, primary care. You have those local authority services, social care, and those community groups. And we had some lovely examples of that just now. So thank you very much for sharing that. That's really wonderful. And I think, the ARCs have a really great opportunity to really drive some of this collaboration. And I see it as a Venn diagram where there's a happy melting pot in the middle of people coming together, exactly as we've seen, and catalysing that research activity. So please do keep that going. And please do think about how you can collaborate across all of the NIHR infrastructure, not just the HDRCs. We heard about the commercial research delivery centres earlier. We've got the RDNs, we've got the patient safety research collaboratives. We've got so much infrastructure that operates in community settings. So do think about how you can collaborate and work collectively together to offer more people those research opportunities. But I couldn't come to ArcFest without talking about the fact that it is 20 years of the NIHR this year. And we've been looking back and celebrating some of the wonderful things that we've achieved working together across the last 20 years. Of course, it was Dame Sally Davis that set the NIHR up all those years ago. But for me, it's not about what we've done, although it is, of course, a tremendous achievement. But really, it's more about the future, isn't it? It's about what we can do in the next 10 years that sets that legacy for the next 20 years. And what I want to say to you is that legacy of the next 10 years is sat in this room. The capacity building work that you're doing, all of those things that we've heard about, that is what will change the dial on all of these challenges we've been talking about. So the next 10 years is all about what you do in this room, what you do in the next commission. And I can't think of a better way to launch the ARC than to just say the energy and the passion that you bring to it is what will really make a difference to patients. So thank you for everything you do. Keep going and think about building the legacy of the next 10 years. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Alice, for those words. Much appreciated. And please do stay for as long as you can and find out what we're doing. So it's my honour. Thank you very much. As we launch ARC NWC Phase 2, I have to recognise that one of the reasons that we got here is to all the hard work that our distinguished Professor Jenny Pope of Lancaster University, who's been a strong supporter of ARC, and me, held our feet to the fire, made sure we stick closely to our aims about inequalities, about co-production, about listening to voices that rarely get listened to. And I really want to honour Jenny, for all her work and being our outgoing chair of our steering board. We asked her to stay, but it was a two-word answer. And I'd like to give you some flowers and a card from me. Jenny. So those of you might be familiar with a certain film, and you weren't expecting this. But we're now going to do a countdown to the launch of ARC NWC Phase. I thought you were doing this as well.